Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the Fantasy Football Week 5 wide receiver starter sits. I'm going to be specifically talking about my 4 starts, my 4 sits at the wide receiver position as we enter Week 5 of the fantasy football season, while also going through my 1 through 36 rankings at the wide receiver position to give you guys a better idea of who to start over who as Week 5 begins. Now, there will be timestamps below. I know many of you have continuously asked for them. I will be putting them on a player-to-player basis. If I mention them, the timestamp will be below. And before we begin, I just want to thank everybody who has subscribed to my YouTube channel, continues to support. I will be answering all of those questions in the comment section. I know that they keep stacking up. There's about 200 questions sitting there for me. I will get to them, and I'll try to get to them before Thursday Night Football. It's impossible to try to answer them all with my time constraints, so please bear with me. There are other people down in the comment section that are willing to help and will hopefully get to you if I don't. So then again, I mean, it's a possibility that no one gets to you, but that's what the rankings are for. Anyway, so let's get right into it, shall we? Hey everybody, how's it going? So we're talking about my starts of the week. John Brown, Corey Davis, 2 guys that I can no longer ignore, especially John Brown. Over the last couple weeks, John Brown has been absolutely amazing in all formats, whether it's standard to the full point PPR. He's been incredible. Why? Because he's had great target share within an offense that has a lot of weapons, right? Bringing in the likes of Michael Crabtree, Willie Snead, John Brown this past offseason, going and drafting tight ends like Hayden Hurst and Mark Andrews. The Ravens built an offense around Joe Flacco and with just brand new pieces. So no one really knew who was he going to stick to. He stuck to the deep ball, John Brown, that has absolutely been torching the league. I mean, just in fantasy purposes, this dude is a double-digit monster, right? In the last 4 weeks, this guy has, he's had, let's see that, 40 targets? You've got to be kidding me. It's 40. Is my math wrong? No, it's... Okay, people, here we go. It's 30 targets. Relax. Holy moly. My math. That's why I'm not in school anymore. You graduate, you don't have to think about math anymore. Okay, so 40 targets would have been a little much, honestly. But 30 targets, that seems reasonable, okay? And he catches a couple balls a game, no big deal. But his yardage is absolutely ridiculous. His yards per game and his yards per catch are absolutely crazy, right? In week 1 versus Buffalo, obviously it was a little bit less than you would expect, but the fact of the matter is he caught a touchdown in that game for only 44 yards. Then he turned it up in week 2 with 92 receiving yards and another touchdown. In week 3 against Denver, who has great corners, he had 86 receiving yards, no touchdown, but no big deal. He had 5 receptions. And this past week against the Pittsburgh Steelers, 116 receiving yards and a touchdown, a 71-yard long bomb. I mean, John Brown's an absolute animal. Coming into week 5 of the regular season, the Baltimore Ravens, they play against a pretty weak defense that got exploited by the Raiders this past week. They play against the Cleveland Browns. I think John Brown, who has performed pretty consistently throughout this entire season, is going to continue to do as he's done. Obviously, a lot of his fantasy production is contingent on whether he catches that touchdown. But I think with Joe Flacco's ability to throw the deep ball and the Ravens being able to at least man up a pretty good offense out there, I mean, they're a decent offense, right? They're not going to blow you out. But I think John Brown will have opportunities to score because this Ravens offense is decent enough to at least find him some opportunities. I like him this week as one of my starts of the week. Okay, now let's talk about Corey Davis, a guy that was quiet for a couple weeks. Why? Because Marcus Mariota wasn't playing. I mean, that's plain and simple. Playing against the Houston Texans and playing against the Jacksonville Jaguars, in which you either have a hurt Mariota or a hurt Blaine Gabbert, it's not going to really do you much good, right? And I don't even know if Blaine Gabbert was hurt against Houston, but God, he was terrible, right? So, we're just going to give him the excuse. He was hurt, guys. Oh, my God. Anyway, now with Mariota, Corey Davis is an absolute animal. In week 1 with Mariota, 13 targets. In week 4 this past week, 15 targets, right? I think Corey Davis, as the season progresses, is going to continue to get better and better. And he's going to continue to find himself with 10-plus targets a game. It's all going to be contingent, obviously, on whether he catches at least 70% of those balls. And if he does, which I'm expecting him to do so, because honestly, how many other good receivers are on this team, right? You have a couple guys Tajay Sharp, you have Derrick Henry, Deion Lewis, who are going to do some stuff here and there. But otherwise, there's no more Delaney Walker. Rashad Matthews is pretty much MIA with this team. And I think Corey Davis is the premier wide receiver on the Titans, who has a really good matchup this week against the Buffalo Bills. I like Corey Davis this week. I 100% suggest starting him because he is going to be lights out. He's going to have great production. So let's move on to my next starts of the week. Okay, this is a new thing, right? We're going to have 2 receivers as starts of the week. Well, 2 from the same team. I'm going to say, obviously, you should be starting all of your Rams, okay? I'm not talking about Tyler Higbee. I'm not talking about backup, running backs. No. I'm talking about Goff, Gurley, Cooks, Kupp, and Woods, right? These are 5 pieces that should be starting. If you have all 5 of them, start them all. If you have all 5 of them, I want to give you a firm handshake and say thank you for at least believing in the Rams more than anybody else. And then just start them all, okay? Now, specifically, Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods this week should absolutely be starting for your team. Just off of the performances they had last week and the target share that they continuously got, it's hard not to be excited about these guys. They're continuously being productive, and this offense is looking fantastic. Now, the way I see it, going against the Seattle Seahawks this week, who are going to be down Earl Thomas, and Michael Kendricks, who just was indefinitely suspended for the insider trading allegations. Blah, blah. Okay, irrelevant. But Kupp and Woods and Cooks and Gurley and Goff are going to all have great weeks, because they're going to torch the Seattle Seahawks defense without a doubt in my mind. You should be starting these 2. These 2 are starts of the week for week 5 of the regular season, and so on until, someone gets hurt, because honestly, they're going to find production no matter what. All right, my last start of the week, I want to talk about another guy I can't ignore any longer. My goodness, Calvin Ridley. 5 touchdowns in 2 weeks, people. That's ridiculous. When I said... Okay, last week I was like, don't worry about Calvin Ridley. It's unsustainable. You can't have, 3 touchdowns in one game and follow it with another, couple touchdown game. He proved me wrong. And it hurts a little bit. But to be honest, I'm not that upset. Why? Because Calvin Ridley is an absolute animal. And I think this week, if you've seen my quarterback video from before, if you haven't yet, go watch it right now. But if you've seen it before, this video, hopefully you have, you know that Matt Ryan is my number 1 quarterback of the week. I think that the Atlanta Falcons are going to have a shootout against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have given up a boatload of points, as I was mentioning before with John Brown. I think Calvin really is going to have himself another great week, along with Julio Jones in the wide receiver core. And the entire offense, to be honest, of the Atlanta Falcons. I like Calvin Ridley this week. Obviously... It's kind of been Calvin Ridley coming out of nowhere. Just think about it, right? In week 3, 7 receptions, 3 in which were touchdowns. That's ridiculous. But 146 yards, right? This past week, against Cincinnati, 4 receptions, 2 in which were touchdowns. That's 50% of the passes he catches. Okay, it's unbelievable. On the last 11 catches, he has 5 receiving touchdowns. It's almost 50%. It's unsustainable, but if he's going to keep doing it, and I like the matchup this week, he's going to probably score 1. I like Calvin Ridley. He's my start of the week, or my last start of the week that I wanted to mention. Let's get to the sits. We've got Tyler Lockett and Nelson Agholor, both who are in a very similar predicament. They are both, or were both, the number 1 wide receivers of their respective teams, because the number 1 wide receivers, Alshon Jeffrey and Doug Baldwin, were out for the last couple weeks. Alshon Jeffrey with the shoulder surgery that he had this past offseason, sidelined him for the first couple weeks. And Doug Baldwin with that MCL sprain that he had, Now that Doug Baldwin and Alshon Jeffrey are back, these guys are going to see, in my opinion, very limited opportunity going forward. Let's talk about Tyler Lockett specifically. I think of the two, Tyler Lockett has a better opportunity rest of season because he has the ability to play on special teams, get some points there. He is a deep threat because of his speed and because, honestly, this Seattle Seahawks offense isn't great. They don't have many pieces like the Eagles offense do to kind of force Russell Wilson to throw elsewhere. I think Doug Baldwin and Tyler Lockett are still going to be the number 1 and 2, but I'm just going to warn you guys that Tyler Lockett should not be expected to start every single week. I don't like the matchup versus the Rams this week. Therefore, I'm saying he's one of my starts. Now, Nelson Agholor has an even more difficult predicament to deal with going forward throughout the rest of the season. He has to compete with Alshon Jeffrey targets. He has to compete with Zach Ertz, the return of Jordan Matthews to Philadelphia, the running backs out of the backfield, no matter who it is, Clement, Smallwood, Ajayi sometimes, Sproles. There is going to be so many mouths to feed within this offense. I think Nelson Agholor is going to be left to just pick up the scraps. This past week, if I'm not mistaken, he had about 5 catches for like 22 yards. It seemed like week 1 all over again, right? He's that short route slot receiver that's going to pick up a couple yards here and there. I just don't see Nelson Agholor being a great, wide receiver for fantasy this coming week, playing against the Minnesota Vikings. I understand that they've been weak against the slot position over the middle. Anthony Barr, praise, oh my God. Whew, bless his soul. But honestly, I just don't see Nelson Agholor having that great of a week. That's why he's one of my sits for week 5 of the regular season. Let's continue to my last 2 sits. Now, I'll get to the other side right over there, but let's talk about Marquise Goodwin. Okay. This past week with CJ Beathard under center, Marquise Goodwin healthy, or what we think is healthy, did not play well in a very good matchup. The Los Angeles Chargers do not have a great defense, and the fact that Marquise Goodwin could not find success is quite concerning. I think going forward throughout the rest of the season, he is going to be a guy that you can perhaps play into good matchups, maybe, hopefully. Otherwise, you can play him on bye weeks and try to fill him into spot. I mean, I don't see where he can be utilized to the point where you want him to be utilized. I think Marquise Goodwin last season was the best with Jimmy Graham at the end of the season, where he had multiple games of 5+ catches and 50+ yards receiving. I just don't see that this offense is going to be able to produce, especially with Patrick Peterson on top of Marquise Goodwin this week, and the 49ers probably wanting to run the ball more with Breida because their advantage this week. I see Marquise Goodwin as a sit. Marquise Goodwin as a sit. Anyway, let's talk about this other thing. Patriots wide receivers. Now, this is what I'm saying, people, okay? I'm not saying sit Julian Edelman. You'll see with my rankings in about, 4 minutes, that Julian Edelman is actually a pretty highly ranked receiver for me this coming week. What I mean is you should probably sit other Patriots wide receivers because Tom Brady's best friend is back. Julian Edelman, the slot, the guy that he checks down the ball to, he's back. He's going to find production. He's going to steal a lot of productivity from other wide receivers. Imagine, Chris Hogan hasn't been great. When Julian Edelman comes back, I don't think it's changing very much. Obviously, Hogan won't be used in the slot, which he really isn't a slot receiver. He'll get pushed to the outside. But there are, again, this is another team with a lot of mouths to feed. Think about it, right? You have Chris Hogan, you have Philip Dorsett, you have Josh Gordon, you have Cordero Patterson, you have Gronkowski, right? You have James White, you have Sony Michel, and then now you just, have Julian Edelman coming off suspension. There are so many mouths to feed. Honestly, there are probably receivers I didn't mention. They have Dwayne Allen also at tight end. They're probably not going to throw him the ball unless Gronkowski's hurt this week, but that's a different conversation. I just think that going forward, it is going to be very, very difficult to know which Patriots wide receiver you can trust in, considering the Patriots play no favorites. They're going to call plays, and if the guys make those specific plays, more fortunate for themselves, just like Cordell Patterson did last week, then so be it. They're going to get, the production. But I don't think the Patriots, besides Julian Edelman going forward, is anything guaranteed. That's why I say stay away from other Patriots wide receivers going forward. Now, let's get into my rankings, shall we? Okay, so we are here at the Week 5 wide receiver rankings. Number 1, we've got ourselves Julio Jones. Now, oh my God, what a surprise. Andrew had Matt Ryan at number 1, and he also has Julio Jones at number 1. Well, I'm not surprised, because the fact of the matter is Julio Jones has been balling out also. I mean, of all the wide receivers in the NFL, Julio Jones, man, I almost feel like he's underrated to a point. Now, that might seem like a pretty stupid thing to say, but I honestly think a lot of people just kind of forget about Julio. And they think to themselves, well, yeah, he's gonna do what he does. But when he performs, he's absolutely insane. Let me just read some stats real quick. I mean, in week 1, right? Obviously, the 10 reception, 169 receiving yard game, that's ridiculous, right? This past week against the Cincinnati Bengals, dude had 9 catches for 173 yards. Oh my God. And that last ball he caught was a 49-yard Hail Mary. One of you in the comment section, actually 2 of you, right? Just want to, it's hilarious. One of you said, I lost because of the Hail Mary, and one of you said, I won because of it. My God, it's hilarious. I'm sorry, but that's just funny. Because I knew it was going to happen, right? You lose by a sliver of a point, and it's because of that kind of stupid shit that you lose. It's not because a guy dropped the ball. It's because of Julio, okay? Anyway, this coming week against Pittsburgh Steelers defense, that's not very great. I think the Atlanta Falcons are going to have an opportunity to absolutely raise hell and honestly just continue to score, continue to be fantasy relevant. I like Julio Jones at number 1 this week. My number 2, Antonio Brown. What a surprise. My number 2 quarterback was from the Pittsburgh Steelers as well. It was Ben Roethlisberger. Wow. Listen, I honestly think this game is going to be a shootout. My rankings, speak the same, to be honest. Antonio Brown, he hasn't been fantastic as of late, and that's honestly because Juju Smith has stepped up within the wide receiver role, found himself a pretty comfortable spot in which he catches a ton of balls and gets way more targets. I mean, sometimes the targets are equal, but sometimes 19 targets, people, holy moly. For a second-year wide receiver, that's insane. Anyway, I think Antonio Brown will find success. He'll have Desmond Trufant on top of him. But honestly, it's not going to make that big of a deal. When you're AB, you're going to find yourself some production. This game is going to be fun. I'm telling you, I don't know what time this game's at. I would have hoped it would have been the Sunday night game, but it's not. It's going to be a morning game probably, and it's going to be a morning shootout. I like Antonio Brown at number 2. Number 3, Michael Thomas, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. I mean, what more is there to say? I understand there's probably going to be a little bit of, less opportunity when they start getting into the two-headed monster that they like to run with. They like to give Alvin Kamara and Melvin Ingram. I almost said it again. I did say it, but Mark Ingram the ball. They're going to feed each of them 10-plus carries a game. It's going to take away a little bit of production within the wide receiver game. But Michael Thomas is still the number 1. He's matchup proof. He's a guy that's absolutely dynamic, and Drew Brees is going to find him the ball. He's still my number 3 this week. Going into a pretty decent matchup, I don't think Josh Norman is going to be able to stop Michael Thomas. Josh Norman's he's not top 10 elite anymore. Not by any means, honestly. Kind of disappeared after he signed that contract. That's usually what happens. Anyway, number 4, Odell Beckham Jr. Coming off a pretty terrible week for Odell Beckham Jr. standards. When you can put up, fantastic fantasy stats against the Jacksonville Jaguars, then you turn around against the Saints and have a pretty bad week, man. And then he was having that meltdown on the sideline. I mean, come on. I mean, just cut the bullshit. Go out there, do your job. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But I think this week against the Carolina Panthers, Odell Beckham's got to step up. I see him doing so. I don't think that the Carolina secondary is much of a threat against Odell Beckham. Yes, Eli Manning looks like dog shit sometimes, right? But he's going to find himself having to throw at Odell Beckham in order to do anything, because Sterling Shepard will get locked down by good corners. Odell Beckham, on the other hand, will find himself open. I like him at number 4 this week. Number 5, DeAndre Hopkins. Again, just another guy that is just a guaranteed top 5 wide receiver on a weekly basis. Why? Because he's going to get the opportunity from Deshaun Watson. He's going to find himself in a pretty decent matchup. The Cowboys' secondary is not terrible, but they got absolutely ruined by just Golden Tate last week. But I think if the Cowboys want to, and they want to take away someone, DeAndre Hopkins is the guy that they're going to take away, and that'll force Deshaun Watson to just throw to Kyle Fuller, and Kyle Fuller will just be ridiculous. But I still think DeAndre Hopkins will find himself some production. He's my number 5 this week. Number 6, Adam Thielen. My goodness. Adam Thielen. Ooh, baby. Hooked on a Thielen. He is absolutely amazing. He's outperforming Stefon Diggs on a weekly basis, and he's going to continuously do it, playing against a Philadelphia secondary who I don't think is very threatening to by any means, honestly. I think it's going to be a good game. I think Adam Thielen is going to continue to rack up his, 14 targets a week, 10 receptions, 100-plus yards. I like Adam Thielen this week. Number 7, Keenan Allen playing against the Raiders. It should be, by all means, a good game, okay? When I mean good game, I mean fantasy-wise, right? They're pretty shady on the defense, the Raiders and the Los Angeles Chargers. They're pretty sketchy on the defensive side of the ball, both of them. But they both have decent offenses. When I mean decent, the Raiders have a decent offense. The Chargers have a fantastic offense, right? They're going to continuously score no matter who you put in front of them. Now, the thing is Keenan Allen healthy? I think he's going to be healthy for this week. He's going to find himself, being Keenan Allen once again. Many of you have been sitting here thinking, where the heck is my Keenan Allen that I drafted? This guy's a bum. This is an imposter, right? Who is this? He will return. He will find himself again. They have to riddle him with targets. They literally need to, or Phillip Rivers specifically needs to throw the ball to Keenan Allen 10-plus times a game. He needs to. He's a PPR receiver that isn't going to make a big 70-yard play. He's a guy that's going to catch the ball 10 times a game and dwindle you down just like Adam Thielen does on a weekly basis. Okay, so number 9, Davante Adams. Now, let me explain to you why I have Davante Adams at number 9. Probably could be higher because of Randall Cobb's injury and the concussion to Geronimo Allison this past week. But injury news came out. I was sitting there. I was at work. I looked at my phone. It's like, trademark, we can't do that. Anyway, Davante Adams has a calf injury. Come on, right? So all 3 of the Packers wide receivers are questionable. You got to be kidding. You got to give me a break. That's BS, right? I still think he's going to be fine. If all the receivers that are injured for the Packers, Davante Adams is going to be the only one that plays, I think, this week. Unless Geronimo Allison can get through injury protocol, it's going to be Davante Adams, the run game, and Jimmy Graham. That's pretty much going to be the only weapons there for Aaron Rodgers this week. Against the Lions defense, that's not that good. So I think Davante Adams, as long as he's healthy, I dwindled him down in the rankings because I'm a little worried here and there. But if he can be able to, at least play this week, he's going to have some fantasy production. I like him this week. Number 10, Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, do I have to say any more? This is the first week I don't have him as a start of the week, right? I probably should have had him there, but to be honest, I don't think you need to know to start him this week or any weeks going forward. Juju Smith-Schuster has proved thus far in the 2018 fantasy football season that he is worth a start every single effing week. He's an absolute animal, and I think he's going to have a very good matchup versus a suspect defense in Atlanta in the Dome Stadium. It's going to be a good game. Number 11, Tyreek Hill. To be honest, I thought about this one for a little while. I thought maybe Tyreek Hill doesn't catch that bomb this week, but you never know. I think Tyreek Hill going forward, he's gonna have games where he looks like a bum, and he's gonna have games that he looks like an absolute beast. Right now, it's going to be it's the ability to figure out and pinpoint which specific games he's going to be amazing in is the entire thing. Like, obviously, when they play against the Chargers, he's going to be great. Obviously, when he plays against the Raiders, he's going to be great. When they play against defenses that can't cover anybody or can't cover speed, right? If they end up playing the 49ers, again, no, they don't. But they, I'm sure that what I'm trying to say, people, is that Tyreek Hill, yes, he's very talented. But the issue is, if he plays against a team that can lock him down, is he going to be able to find production? In the last 2 weeks in fantasy, he's accounted for that's 16.7 points in half-point PPR in the last 2 weeks, which is 6.6 in week 3 against San Francisco. Didn't play well. Only had 2 catches. And this past week, in which he had 9 catches, but only 54 yards. If teams are beginning to learn how to lock him down, it'll open up, obviously, Travis Kelce to more receptions and opens up the run game a little bit more. But I see that the Kansas City Chiefs can use him and utilize him in different areas, right? He always has those punt returns. They bring him into the backfield. They do the jet sweep BS. They will find a way to keep Tyreek Hill relevant in fantasy. I like him this week at number 11. Number 12, Stefon Diggs. I mean, by all means, he's going to have a good week. Why? Because Kirk Cousins has 3 people to throw the ball to. 3. Okay? He has Adam Thielen, he has Kyle Rudolph, and he has Stefon Diggs. There is no running game. Dalvin Cook didn't even practice today. Forget about the running game. They're throwing the ball the entire time, right? And they're playing against the Philadelphia defense, right? They're not going to want to run the ball against that D-line. So, Stefon Diggs, my number 12. Number 13, Brandin Cooks. As I mentioned, the other 2 Rams wide receivers earlier in the video, you can't not start Brandin Cooks every single week. He is going to take the top off of the defense consistently. He's going to find himself to be fantasy relevant. And if he ends up catching those touchdowns like he's done in the last 2 weeks, he's going to continue to drop 15-plus fantasy points, maybe more, 20-plus every single week, because this offense is absolutely unstoppable. I like Brandin Cooks at my number 13 this week. Number 14, Jarvis Landry. Good old Jarvis. Was one of my starts of the week last week. Barely saved his week with a touchdown. Only had, 4 receptions this past week. Is obviously going to improve. That is, bare minimum Jarvis Landry. Baker Mayfield struggled a little bit, but he's going to find himself. He's going to find himself having to, honestly, they have to throw the ball to 2 main targets. All right, forget about the Callaway, forget about the Higgins. Just throw the ball to your Duke Johnson and throw the ball to Jarvis Landry. That's it. You don't even need to throw the ball to the tight end, okay? Duke Johnson and Jarvis Landry. That's it. This is my letter to you, Baker Mayfield. Please, just feed Duke Johnson the ball. Make him relevant again, okay? So that when I picked him up off the waivers in multiple leagues, it doesn't screw me over. Anyway, but honestly, Jarvis Landry going forward, he's a guy that he's just like good old Keenan Allen. He needs targets to be relevant. If you don't give him that 10-plus targets a game, he's not going to be able to do much for you. I think this week against the Ravens defense, they are going to be challenged. It's going to be tough for Baker, but then again, Jarvis Landry is too talented of a wide receiver to doubt going forward. I like him at 14. Number 15, Alshon Jeffrey, who came back this past week, and he looked fantastic. He looked like a number 1 wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles. He looked like he picked up where he left off in that Super Bowl last season, and to be honest, I like him going forward, playing against the Minnesota Vikings defense that did not look good this past week against the Rams. Bigger body. He's going to be able to dominate corners, but just putting it out there, Xavier Rhodes is a big corner. Let's not forget that. Even though Alshon Jeffrey is 6'5", Xavier Rhodes at 6'2", 6'2.5", he'll be able to match him up, but I still like Alshon Jeffrey this coming week. Number 16, Golden Tate. Boom, Golden Tate, you came back. You've established yourself as the number 1 wide receiver for the Detroit Lions team. You're going to continue to find yourself with your 10-plus targets a game, which all these other receivers need. But, Golden Tate, he proved himself to be a fantastic asset in fantasy this last week. He has a consistent floor, okay? Now, that touchdown upside, that's what we're always thinking to ourselves. Is he going to have it this week? Is it this week? We really honestly can't, depend on Golden Tate to be a touchdown kind of guy. But going forward, just in PPR, his yards looked fantastic. And I think this week against the Packers defense, it's not great. He's going to have a pretty good time and a pretty productive week. Number 16, that's Golden Tate. All right, number 17, good old Emmanuel Sanders. Has not looked good as of late at all. Okay, in the first couple weeks, boom, he popped off the screen. he was looking fantastic. And then, just like the Broncos defense, they started to dwindle away and started to, melt themselves into that running game. And that's what they've depended on the last couple of weeks, just Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay. And everything else is just secondary, right? Emmanuel Sanders, hopefully, will continue to be the number one wide receiver on this offense, which he is. But the issue that I'm having is, where is his targets? This is another guy who is missing out on targets. I still think that we can trust him this week against the Jets defense that honestly let Blake Bortles put up 28 fantasy points, and D.D. Westbrook had over 100 yards receiving. So I still trust in Emmanuel Sanders this week. Just, he needs his targets, plain and simple. All right, number 18, Corey Davis, a man that actually gets his targets, 15 plus. As I mentioned before in these, earlier in the video when I talked about him being as one of my starts of the week, he's going to have a great opportunity this week against the Buffalo Bills. He is going to be productive, and I like him at number 18. All right, moving on. Calvin Ridley, my next start of the week that I had mentioned. 19, I've talked about him already. Number 20, Robert Woods, already spoke about him. Number 21, John Brown. I've already talked about him. You see, it's kind of the same area. These guys are going to be in the, wide receiver 2 conversation, but they always have the potential to outplay that projection, move up and become wide receiver 1s. That's why I have them here. That's why I've talked about them as starts of the week, because they're not guys that are guaranteed to have blowout games, but I think that you should trust them going forward, and especially in this week. Number 22, Tyler Boyd. Man, has this guy just knocked it out of the park as of late? He is fantastic. Andy Dalton has finally found his wide receiver 2. For the last couple of years, I think it's been Brandon LaFell. They've drafted John Ross to be that number 2. It hasn't worked out. They just lost Tyler Eifert. I think the targets are just going to go to A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd, period. There's no one else within this offense, and I don't think they need anybody else. Tyler Boyd has stepped up. He's had, 100 yards this past week, over 10 receptions. What an absolute monster. I mean, going forward, especially against a Miami defense that got shellacked this last week, I like Tyler Boyd as my number 22, maybe even higher in full PPR. But, this list, half-point PPR, don't worry about it. Number 23, Cooper Kupp. I mentioned him before. Good old Cooper Kupp, fantastic receiver. He's going to have his opportunities because he's Jared Goff's best friend. And, give me a second here. I'll mention that later. But anyway, so Cooper Kupp as of right now, 23, as I mentioned him before. He's going to have a great week against a very, 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 I would say, the Seahawks defense is honestly just a shell of what it used to be. They have Bobby Wagner still there, but other than that, what else do they have left? I don't really see much, and I don't really see much stopping this Rams offense. I like Cooper Kupp this week. Number 24, speaking of Seahawks, we have Doug Baldwin coming off injury, who's going to be the number 1 wide receiver for this team. He's going to get the most targets. He's going to have the most production amongst the wide receivers in Seattle. I like him at 24 this coming week. Just because, honestly, Brandon Marshall is beginning to get dwindled out. The loss of Will Disley, the running game eventually will be stopped, and they will be forced to throw the ball. And it's going to go to Doug Baldwin because that's where Russell Wilson's security lies. Number 25, Will Fuller, a wide receiver that continues to be fantasy relevant, continues to score touchdowns with Deshaun Watson. He's absolutely ridiculous. Going forward, again, he's at that fringe wide receiver 3 spot. That's where I like him. I like Will Fuller as a wide receiver 3. If he's at your wide receiver 2, that's fine because he has the upside of that and even the upside of a 20-point game on a weekly basis because of his ability to have a deep threat, his opportunity with all the targets that he gets, and on top of it, he's a red zone threat. Number 26, Julian Edelman. Here we are. We are at the point. I don't think Julian Edelman is going to score multiple touchdowns. He's never been that guy. He is a guy that is similar to Golden Tate, where he's going to have his 8 to 9 targets, 5 to 6 receptions a game, maybe even more, depending on the game script. And then he's going to hopefully have the upside of a touchdown. Other than that, that's his base floor. Anything more, fantastic. Anything less, how dare you? I think Julian Edelman coming back this week is going to be prepared. Perhaps the New England Patriots use him as a distraction in order to open up other plays. But I honestly think against a Colts defense, they're not going to really have to do that. He's going to have himself a good week. He's my number 26. Number 27, we have Kenny Golladay, a guy that's proven himself earlier this season. Didn't have a great game this past week. Just had his average floor, right? That's what you want. You want at least some consistency. If he doesn't catch that touchdown, at least you have that consistency so he doesn't bury you on a week-to-week basis. He's a guy that you can trust. I like Kenny Golladay. He's my number 27 this week. Number 28, Devin Funchess coming off the bye week. Here's the thing. While Funchess doesn't have to worry about good old Greg Olsen taking targets from him, they're playing against a pretty meh defense, right? They play against the New York Giants this coming week. I think Devin Funchess has a pretty good opportunity to be a stud, like absolute stud this week. He probably could have been one of my starts of the week, but the fact of the matter is, you just don't, I honestly just don't trust Cam Newton in the red zone. What I mean by that, when Cam Newton's in the red zone, I feel like he's just going to pull the ball and run, right? That's not going to set up anything much for Devin Funchess, but then again, he is the number one wide receiver. He's going to have a good week. I like my 28 at that wide receiver 3 fringe area. Number 29, Larry Fitz. Hopefully, he's a little bit more healthier this coming week. Larry Fitz is going to have an opportunity this game. They play against the 49ers defense that is not great by all means. Okay, Larry Fitzgerald is Larry Legend for a reason. Josh Rosen is going to have a good game this week. And hopefully, the Cardinals pick up their first win of the season. Okay, that's my prediction so far. And I really do like Larry Fitzgerald this week. I think he's going to have a good opportunity to be fantasy relevant. Pull him off the bench, guys. Get him ready. Number 30, Quincy Enunwa. Continues, even against the Jacksonville Jaguars, he continues to be a guy that you just are amazed with, right? I'm amazed with him. Picking him up off waivers, there's a guy before the season started that even predicted this specifically, right? He, in the comment section, said, Andrew, are you sure about Robbie Anderson this season? Or we were talking about week 1 specifically. Are you sure about Robbie Anderson in week 1? Because of the fact that the Jets play a West Coast offense, they're going to heavily favor the short passing game, and that's where Quincy Enunwa gets his bread and butter. I'm a Jets fan. Thank you very much, blah, 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 right? And I was like, I still like Robbie Anderson, right? My God, was I wrong. Robbie Anderson had a decent week 1. Congratulations. Ever since then, I've shunned him off. But Quincy Enunwa has been an absolute animal. The guy who called it, if you're still around, go to the comment section. Bless your soul. You called it. You deserve the props. Just go to the rooftops and just scream from them. I was right. Anyway, Quincy Enunwa, number 30. Number 31, Kenny Stills. Honestly, the Dolphins are a joke. Of the available wide receivers, what was it? Like, Devontae Parker was out this past week. What a surprise. It's Devontae Parker, guys. Don't have him on your roster. Drop him. I have never promoted Devontae Parker on this channel. Not a single time. So I'm hoping you guys have never touched him. But of the available wide receivers there, you have Amendola. Nope. Pass. Albert Wilson. Congratulations. He had one good week. Jakeem Grant. Congratulations. He had one good week. And then you have Kenny Stills, who continues to get his targets here and there. I think you'll find a little bit more success against the Cincinnati Bengals defense. Here's the thing about Kenny Stills. He's boom or bust. That's what he is. He has no base floor. He has no floor of 10 points. That is not how Kenny Stills works. He's going to either get you 4 points or he's going to have 16 points. That's how it works. Plain and simple, because he's a deep threat, and they're not using him to the standards that I thought they would in a slot position where Jarvis Landry was used this past couple years. So Kenny Stills, he's boom or bust. He's my number 31. Number 32, Jordy Nelson. Now, you might be thinking, where's Amari Cooper? God, I'm not. Okay, really quickly. I think I mentioned this before. I don't even have to pull up any graphic, nothing. Amari Cooper, every other week, all right, is complete garbage. Okay? Week 1, garbage. Week 2, fantastic. He had a great week. Week 3, garbage. Week 4 was great. Guys, it's his off week. I like Jordy Nelson this week. Has a good matchup against the Chargers. Derek Carr's going to have to throw the ball to somebody, and it's probably not going to be Amari Cooper. It's probably going to be Jared Cook, but all things considered, I like Jordy Nelson this week at 32. Number 33, Demaryius Thomas was on the thumbnail. I'm beginning, as I talked about Emmanuel Sanders a little bit earlier, I'm beginning to get worried about the passing game in Denver, controlled by Case Keenum. There's so much opportunity for him to be great. He just doesn't seem to grab onto it and be able to succeed. I don't get it. It's the kind of the same scheme that he had last season, right? He has those two main wide receivers he wants to throw the ball to. Perhaps Thielen and Diggs are just better than the good old Demaryius Thomas and Sanders, but I think, yes, it may be a little bit of a downgrade team-wise, but still he should be able to feed Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders the ball at least 10 times a game, right? Targets-wise. They don't have to catch it that many times, but targets-wise, it should be there. Number 34, Marvin Jones, the third amigo of the Detroit Lions offense, or at least the wide receiver core, being left in the dust. That's what I thought was going to happen when I sacrificed him on my gauntlet video many weeks back. I told you, Marvin Jones is going to be the one who takes the production and opportunity dip to Galladay's increase going forward. That's where I see it. But again, he still has a decent matchup, and he still has touchdown upside, so he's 34. Number 35, Michael Crabtree, playing against the Browns this week. Just like John Brown, who has a great opportunity, Michael Crabtree still has that decent opportunity. The question is, will Michael Crabtree drop 3 balls like he did this past week, or will he be able to figure it out, find himself in the red zone, and perhaps have himself a pretty decent game in standard PPR, half point, doesn't matter, but he's very touchdown dependent as of right now, which he has been in many of his, the last 2 seasons while he was with the Raiders. He was that red zone target, right? His yards and his receptions weren't that high, but he had those touchdowns, and that's what kept him relevant. The last guy I want to talk about, Sterling Shepard. I mean, if Sterling Shepard has been able to put up, double-digit fantasy points, he had 20-plus this past week, they're going to continue to feed him the ball, right? Eli's going to continue to feed him. I think this week it's not the best of matchups against the Carolina Panthers, but I can't ignore the fact that Sterling Shepard is continuing to be good. I think he's going to have a decent week this week. A couple guys I didn't mention in this video, Geronimo Allison, I did mention concussion. I'm worried about it. Sammy Watkins out with an injury on Monday. I don't know where it lies or stands as of right now. Colts wide receivers here and there. Oh, speaking of Colts, many of you have asked me about what my thoughts on Nyheim Hines is. All right, here's my gist of it right now, okay? Here's the honest truth from me, okay? The way I see it, Nyheim Hines, yes, he had a pretty good performance this past week. He was decent the week before. The thing is, Nyheim Hines is not a running back that I'm ever going to suggest you start, okay? He is very, very, very dependent on the game script, right? Now you might be thinking, okay, the Colts are going to be able to be down about 20 points this game. They're going to have to throw the ball. They're going to bring him in as a third down back. They're going to use him, blah, blah, blah. I can't guarantee you that is going to be his role. I don't know what Nyheim Hines is going to consistently be given. Yes, he may have had, 6 to 7 receptions this past week and 2 touchdown receptions and a bunch of yards receiving the ball while he never ran the ball. But I don't think he's somebody that you can consistently depend on, nor do I think he can be consistently dependent on this week. I'm very worried about the specific matchup and the opportunity in that backfield. Marlon Mack is out this week. T.Y. Hilton is out this week. Jack Doyle is out this week. This offense for the Colts is pretty bare bones. Jordan Wilkins, Robert Turbin, and Nyheim Hines are going to be Jeremy McNichols. They're all in this backfield. So who knows who's going to get the real opportunity or the real boost? Obviously, we're all assuming, right? Nyheim Hines will be the third down back. He will catch the ball out of the backfield. But you just never know how it's going to shake down. I don't want to suggest a guy into a Thursday night matchup in which I just don't trust him. I don't trust him. There's a possibility that he just gets shellacked this week and ends up being a dud. That's my thoughts on him. Anybody have any questions, go down in the comment section. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Leave a like if you like this content. And until next time, which will be the tight ends video, probably tomorrow, Thursdays for tight ends. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and I'll see you guys.